Welcome to Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm your host, Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and I would like to thank you, our loyal listening audience, for welcoming us into your homes another Thursday evening. This is a real important show to me and to you, and I appreciate your time, so don't turn the channel, all right? And if you want any information on fatherhood, on Chicago Counterpoint TV, the Fatherhood Educational Institute, take a look at your screen and dial 312-795-9060, 312-795-9060, and log on to fatherhood-edu.org. And as our guest today, I'm very honored to have Chicago matrimonial attorney, a great litigator, Arthur Kallow, back by popular demand on CAN TV. And Art Kallow is a board member of the Fatherhood Educational Institute, an attorney I respect, who's been appointed in many cases by judges in the Circuit Court of Cook County to represent and protect children. And I have a lot of respect for Mr. Kallow, who graduated from Northwestern University's School of Law with a Juris Doctor degree. He earned the coveted Juris Doctor degree, and he lectured at Northwestern Law School after he had graduated. He's very well respected in the legal community, and it's an honor to have Arthur Kallow here this evening. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
I remember Art Kallow trying a very difficult case in Atlanta, Georgia, against all odds, and he won the trial. And I was there, and I watched him win the trial. It was a great trial. Caller, you're on the air. Attorney Jeffrey Leving, Chicago Counterpoint Television. Our guest tonight, Attorney Arthur Kallow. What can Attorney Kallow do for you?
Well, thanks for taking my call. I have a friend, a close friend, who doesn't see his kids very much, and he sort of feels defeated. Everyone tells him that it's not even worth going to court because the mom always gets custody. And I wondered if you guys could speak to that, because I know he's watching tonight.
Well, I'll let Art Kallow, our legal commentator and attorney for the evening, answer that question. Art, could you please help this gentleman?
Yes, he shouldn't be discouraged this early in a case. He should never be discouraged. I know many people who are able to get custody. Many men are able to get custody. It's an old wives' tale. I don't want to sound sexist, but it's really an ancient tale that is no longer true, that the moms get custody. We are very effective in getting custody for fathers, and I can tell you that if he doesn't do anything, then that will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. In appropriate cases, fathers do get custody, and it's just as appropriate for them to have custody as mothers. So he shouldn't lose hope. He should be in a lawyer's office that's competent and knows how to do it and doesn't discourage him. Because if he has hope and if he is persistent, he will prevail.
And never forget, children thrive when their fathers believe in them. And fathers thrive when they believe in themselves. So you can't give up hope, because everything may seem impossible, but it's only impossible until it's done and you accomplish your goals. And I do appreciate you calling, caller. That's a very important question. And remember, Chicago Counterpoint Television is brought to you by the Fatherhood Educational Institute at fatherhood-edu.org. And the Fatherhood Educational Institute has a fantastic website, and here's a snapshot of the website at fatherhood-edu.org. That's fatherhood-edu.org. And thank you for calling, caller. And if anybody wants to call into the show, you can look at your television screen, and the call-in number is right on your television screen, 312-738-1060. Caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm the host, Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and it's an honor to have Art Kallow, Attorney Art Kallow, here tonight. What can he do for you?
Hello, how you guys doing? Good to meet you guys. Yeah, I had a question and a half, two-part question. The first one is, if my girlfriend, baby mama, whatever you want to call it, if she's not taking care of the child or whatever like that, and I'm doing all my responsibilities and all that stuff or whatever, will it be possible if I'm able to take her to child support and then still take responsibility of that child and put her on child support? Would that be possible? That's my first question. Yeah.
I'll let Art Kallow answer that question, but I remember representing a father who asked me if his wife could be ordered to pay him child support. Well, we tried the case, and he ended up being awarded custody. So he ended up custody with his little boy. The judge gave him his home and his business, and the judge gave his wife possession of their pet cat. So she didn't do too well in that trial. So can a father get child support? Yes, a court can award child support to a father with custody, and a judge can award a father his home. These things can happen, but I will let Art Kallow respond to that question.
Yes, I think that your friend really has to be concerned about the well-being of the children. You had said it originally that he thought that they were being neglected, and maybe that his money that he's paying for child support wasn't going to a good purpose. This would be a case that cries out for a change of possession of the children if she's not taking care of them. And then the child support would take care of itself. He wouldn't be paying her child support if the children were living with him. And as Mr. Leving just said, it's very likely that she'd have to be giving him child support. So I think he should focus on the well-being of the children, because that's what the courts care about, and that's what he should care about, and it sounds like that's what he does care about.
Thank you, caller. Our next caller, you're on the air with Chicago Counterpoint TV. I'm the host, Attorney Jeff Leving, and it's an honor to have Arthur Kallow. A lot of people call him Art Instagrammer Kallow, and he's here to answer your questions. The reason some people call him Instagrammer, because every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. I have a show on Power 92.3 FM, and the last half of the show is simulcast on Instagram, and he is always on Instagram, which is fantastic and which I appreciate. So, caller, what can our Instagrammer Kallow do for you?
Yeah, I have a question. A friend of mine was divorced in Spain, where she previously lived, and was granted custody of their baby girl. She now lives in Illinois with a child. Her ex-husband, who is Spanish, has always lived there in Spain, does not see the child, and has not expressed any interest in seeing the child, and does not pay child support for the child, which he was ordered to do in the original divorce decree. Can my friend enforce the Spanish support order in Illinois, where she resides with the child? And if so, how can she seek to get him to pay back child support from him while she's in Illinois?
Thank you, and Art Kallow will answer that question, but before he does, Mr. Kallow, have you ever been to Spain?
Yes, I've been to Spain several times.
Oh, that's very interesting, because I know Arthur Kallow has traveled quite extensively. But please help this caller.
Well, she could register the foreign judgment, the Spanish judgment, in Illinois, and Illinois would give full faith and credit to it. That would help in terms of determining where the children live. It might be a little bit more problematic to enforce the judgment against the husband having that done in Illinois, because the husband's not here. Now, if he did come here for some reason, he could be served with papers, and he might accede to the jurisdiction of Illinois. So the question is whether Illinois can have its long arm go out to Spain and enforce a judgment. It might be very difficult, because eventually it's going to have to be done in a Spanish court, unless the husband somehow can be persuaded to come here and give jurisdiction to Illinois for the child support purposes.
Thank you. Spain is very interesting. The first time I went to Spain, I went to Barcelona, and bullfighting was legal. And upon my return, bullfighting became illegal in Barcelona. Not the entire country, just part of it, just Barcelona. Things change, and we have to change with the changing tides in the legal systems globally. It's a small world. Caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm your host, Attorney Jeffrey Leving, and we're very lucky to have Arthur Kallow here, a lawyer who I have a lot of respect for, as our guest this evening.
Mr. Kallow, I'm calling about my son. He pays child support, And he's actually got the kids more than their divorce decree says because his ex-wife travels a lot. But he heard somebody told him about some new law that says if you have the kids for a certain amount of nights per year, that then you don't have to pay child support. Is that right?
Well, the law does permit the court to look at all that. In the past, that wasn't much of an issue, but now with the new law, it depends on how much money each party makes and how much time is spent with the payor. So if the payor has the children for a great deal of time, it would certainly be well worthwhile to calculate the amount of child support that should be paid, especially if the mother is earning a fairly sizable income. This is the sort of thing that he should probably be in a lawyer's office talking about very quickly, because there appears to be a new status quo, a new situation where he's got the children more than he did when the decree was entered, more than the decree says, and we want to be able to firm that up, so get something on file that the status quo should remain in place, and then calculate how many days he has with the children and how much money each of the party makes. And there's a big formula, and we have a computer that has a program in it that actually will tell us how much money each party would have to contribute to child support. And it could very well be that he'll be getting child support, depending upon how much time he has with the children and what her income is and what his income is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, caller. Thank you for calling. The next caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint TV with Jeffrey Leving. What can my guest, Attorney Arthur Kallow, do for you this evening?
Yes, I had a question and a comment for you. Now, as far as the person, say it's me or the person I'm putting on child support doesn't pay child support, is it true that they can revoke your passport and or your driver's license? And I think that, this is me personally, I think that the child support system is kind of like a little bit of a trap, you know what I'm saying, so that these no offense, but so these African-American women can benefit, you know, so they don't have to work. That's my perception. So can you help me out on that?
Okay, well, yes, there are very strict penalties for not paying child support, and those that you just mentioned, revoking a passport and revoking a driver's license, are among the penalties that can be implemented. So it's very important that if a father, for example, who's ordered to pay child support can't make the payments, that he does something immediately before he gets in this big trap, as you mentioned, where he's owing a lot of money and won't ever be able to dig out of it. There's also very high interest payments that are attached to arrearages for child support. So I think that's very important that a man immediately goes into a lawyer's office and makes the arrangements to modify the child support if he can't pay it. He can't just assume that he has a good excuse. Very few judges will listen to those excuses. As far as the political ideas about why child support is paid the way it is very alarming, and I think that it's a bad thing, and there are women of all races that have benefited by this to the detriment of their husbands and fathers of the children, and also to the detriment of the children.
Many men believe the child support system works against them. There are a lot of men that believe the child support system is rigged against them, and they're just viewed as meal tickets, sperm donors, piggy banks. Margaret Mead once said, fathers are biological necessities but social accidents. Wrong. She was 100% wrong. Unfortunately, gender bias has harmed a lot of fathers and children and our families. And I never tell dads to give up. No matter how tough things are, dads can't give up, and fathers can't give up hope. And it's always impossible until it's done. That's what Nelson Mandela said. It's always impossible until it's done. Don't give up hope, even though things are pretty much unfair for dads. But we can change the system if we don't give up hope. Next caller, you're on the air. Chicago Counterpoint TV. Attorney Jeffrey Leving is your host. And it's an honor to have Attorney Arthur Kallow here as my guest this evening. And what can Mr. Kallow, Attorney Kallow, do for you this evening?
Yeah, hi. I appreciate you taking my call, and I do have a question for Mr. Kallow. I have a situation where, someone I know who was married overseas, and they got remarried here in the United States, and now they're looking to get divorced in the U.S. I mean, is the divorce overseas going to be valid in the U.S.? Is that going to affect their proceedings here in Illinois, or how does that work?
Very important question.
It is a very important question. The laws currently look at the date of the marriage to determine how much maintenance or alimony somebody gets. So this is a very important question, whether the marriage overseas was valid. If it's a legal marriage, the court would go back to that, the original marriage. If they got married again in the United States, it's just sort of a ratification of the prior marriage, unless they were divorced in between. But the United States gives full faith and credit to marriages in foreign countries, unless they're prohibited marriages, and then they'd be void. For example, marriages between brothers and sisters, or of people who are not competent to get married. Those marriages might very well not be recognized in Illinois. But I haven't heard anything about that from the caller. So it appears to me that the marriage in overseas predated the marriage here, and I think the court would go back to that date to look at the marriage, and it would have to divorce the couple based upon that marriage.
That was a great question, caller. Fantastic question. And these are the types of questions we're looking for, because the answers are very educational. Next caller, you're on the air. Chicago Counterpoint Television. I'm your host, Attorney Leving, and we have Arthur Kallow here as
Thank you.
our
I want to
guest.
ask Mr. Kallow. My brother's girlfriend took the two kids and moved to Des Moines, Iowa, and put them in school there. They're not married, and everybody's telling them there's nothing you can do. You can't get them back. Is that true?
No, by all means, it's not true. Depends upon exactly what their relationship was. If you said they weren't married, if there was anything in court, any kind of court decree about parentage and about allocation of parental responsibilities, meaning the times that the children spent with each parent, she may have violated that by moving more than 25 miles away from where the children have been living without getting a court order or approval of your brother. That could easily result in her being held in contempt of court. And regardless of that, it appears not to be in the best interest of the children to be so far away from their father and to be removed like that. It certainly is worth pursuing this, and if he doesn't pursue it, he can just assume that they're going to be living in Des Moines, which is like about 300 miles away. So he definitely should be in court challenging this and getting them back as soon as possible, because the longer they stay in Iowa, the more likely it is that Iowa will be the only state that has jurisdiction over the situation. So we wanted to get them back in Illinois. We wanted to get something on file immediately to stop that clock from ticking.
Thank you for calling, and if anybody wants any more information concerning the Fatherhood Educational Institute, FEI is a great Twitter account at Fatherhood EDU, and a fantastic Facebook, Fatherhood Educational Institute, and you could always log on to FEI's website, fatherhood-edu.org. That's fatherhood-edu.org. It's right on your television screen. And the Fatherhood Educational Institute is a great organization, great charity. It's a 501c3, and it does a lot of good work. And there's another snapshot of Chicago Counterpoint TV and the Fatherhood Educational Institute and its phone number. So you should write that number down. It's a good number to have, with a lot of good volunteers, with a board of directors of people that really care and care a lot. Now, Attorney Kallow, and I'm hoping we can get in a quick question before the callers start calling in again, but with the new child support laws, do both parents have to pay support?
Yes, actually, both parents do have to contribute to the support of the children, and the formula comes up with an amount that should be paid, and then it comes up with who should pay into that amount, how much they should pay. So it's a little clearer than it was before. Before the beginning of the year, when they came up with this new calculation, the statute just said that both parents had the duty to support the children, but then it had an amount based upon percentages that were almost always imposed upon the payor, usually the father, and it seemed to neglect the other side's duty to support the children.
What is unallocated family support, Art?
Okay, well, unallocated family support is a method of blending the child support obligation and the maintenance or alimony obligation into one lump sum amount of money on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, or however the parties decide. The advantage of it is that it can be tax deductible to the payor, the entire amount, not just the maintenance, because alimony is tax deductible, but child support isn't. So this way the entire amount, including the child support part of it, would be tax deductible. The person receiving it would have to pay taxes on it, though. And this is something that should be very carefully looked upon by a competent attorney and maybe even a tax advisor, just to make sure that it's done properly to get the advantage that you're looking for, if that's what somebody wants to do.
Thank you. Our next caller, you're on the air, Chicago Counterpoint TV with Jeffrey Leving and my guest Art Kallow. What can Mr. Kallow do for you?
Hi, my son is paying child support, but he cannot see his children. What can we do?
Well, he should be in court and getting an order that he sees the children. If the mother is refusing, the only way to really enforce it is through the courts. The duty to pay child support is something separate from getting to see the children, and I believe that seeing the children is much more important, but it doesn't happen automatically. The state of Illinois is not as interested in getting fathers the ability to see their children as it is in getting mothers to get paid by the fathers. And that's just an unfortunate fact. So he'll probably have to retain a private attorney to examine this and to file something really quickly so that he is able to see his children, because it's not going to happen by itself.
Thank you, caller.
Okay.
Do you have another question, caller? All right, thank you for calling in. We appreciate your interest in Chicago Counterpoint Television. Now, Mr. Kallow, in Illinois, what is a legal separation?
Well, legal separation is a method of determining the rights of parties who are married without getting them divorced. It used to be called separate maintenance. Legal separations will determine where the children live. It will determine what used to be called visitation, parenting time. It will determine child support, and it will also determine the ability to pay maintenance or alimony. It will not take care of property issues unless the parties decide that that's what they want to do by agreement. It's been my experience that when somebody files for legal separation, they very seldom get it. It usually ends up either the parties reconcile or else they end up with a dissolution of marriage. So this is a seldom used tool, but there are some cases where it's advisable to do that, and a competent attorney that's experienced will be able to advise specifically on a specific case which way to go with that.
How does a court decide which parent will get physical custody of their child, Art?
Well, this can sometimes be a long and excruciating process, but the court looks at the best interests of the children. And there's a variety of factors, including the children's wishes, which sometimes can't be ascertained and sometimes can be compromised by influence by one of the parents. It also looks at the parents' fitness to take care of the children, the mental health of all of the parties. It looks at the ability just to care for the children in terms of whether somebody has enough money to do it. That seldom is the guiding factor, but the most important factor in a case involving choosing which parent should have the children living with them is which parent is able to provide for a good relationship between the children and the other parent. And when a court is faced with this, that's usually something that they can determine just by the way that the parties treat each other during the divorce and how they communicate and what they do in the divorce will show which party is really willing to have a good relationship with their children and the other party, rather than fighting with the other party over the children, which can be devastating for the children. I'm a child representative, and that's usually one of the factors that I look at really closely, and it's something that's not just he said, she said. You can tell that the mother doesn't want the father to see the children or vice versa, and that can be very devastating for the children, and that's often the most important factor in my view.
What can a father do if his wife degrades him in front of his children, and this is traumatizing the children? What can that dad do?
Well, there's several things they can do. First of all, they can go into court and get an injunction to stop that kind of behavior. It's very bad for the children, and if it continues, the children could be removed from that parent and put with the parent who's the brunt of the bad mouthing, for lack of a better word, because sometimes that's the only way really to protect the children, because otherwise this may be part of a pattern of alienation, which can be irretrievable and needs to be prevented very quickly, and that should be addressed in court very, very soon, because it usually is just a one-way street. It doesn't get any better unless somebody stops it.
If a father is court-ordered to pay child support and he loses his job and he's completely unable to pay support because of that substantial change in circumstances, what should he do? And if he doesn't do it, what can happen to him?
Well, he should immediately file a petition to modify child support based upon the change in circumstances, to modify it and abate it without having to repay it, to terminate it during the time that he's unemployed. Otherwise, it can continue to accrue, and even if he's able to abate it, the money will have to be paid in the future. So it has to be done properly so that it will never have to be paid in the future until he goes back to work. Then he'll resume future payments. If he doesn't do that, and we've had clients who end up owing hundreds of thousands of dollars, they're never able to pay it off. Their driver's licenses are at risk, and as the prior caller asked, their passports can be at risk. They can be at risk of being incarcerated. So this is something that really needs immediate attention, and it should be done by a very competent attorney who's very careful and does it very promptly.
Well, thank you, Attorney Kallow. I appreciate you being a guest on this important show.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much, John.
And it was a pleasure listening to you. You're a walking law library. Yeah, I mean, your knowledge is incredible.
Thank you.
This is a great show, and I appreciate you being on this show, Attorney Kallow. I'd like to thank my listening audience. This is a great show, and I look forward to seeing everybody same place, same time next week. God bless.